The city of Omeris was cloaked in the hues of twilight as the adventurers limped through its bustling streets. Lanterns flickered to life, casting a warm glow on the cobblestone paths as merchants shouted last-minute bargains and weary travelers sought rest. Tritan led the group, his posture rigid despite the muscle soreness of his shoulders. Mezra followed close behind, her face pale from magical exhaustion. Grodd trudged heavily, cradling one arm with the other, while Ven hummed a jaunty tune while covering his blistered hands. Lana, ever elusive, lingered at the rear, slightly limping from the leg injury she sustained from the dungeon. They approached a modest stone chapel tucked between larger buildings. Its wooden door bore a simple carving of a crescent moon, a symbol of healing and renewal. Tritan rapped on the door. Moments later, the door creaked open, revealing a middle-aged woman with dark hair tied into a loose braid. Her robes were simple but well kept, and her green eyes radiated warmth and authority.
"You look like you fought a dragon and lost,"
she said, her voice tinged with a mixture of concern and dry humor.
"Almost. We need your help,"
Tritan said with a faint smile. The woman stepped aside, motioning them in. The interior of the chapel was quiet, its air perfumed with herbs and incense. The woman gestured for them to sit on wooden benches near a small altar, her practiced hands already gathering vials and bandages from a nearby shelf. The cleric, who introduced herself as Cass, began her work with an efficiency born with years of practice. She moved from Grodd, grumbling about his dislocated arm, to Ven, wincing as she treated his burned hands.
"You live dangerously. I've seen more dungeon raiders leave this life in a shroud than return with their limbs intact,"
Cass remarked, her hands glowing faintly as she sealed Mezra's magical exhaustion with healing energy.
"Comes with the territory. Better than living life tending fields or splitting wood,"
Lana replied, arms crossed. Cass turned to Lana, her expression softening.
"Child, there is no shame in an honest life. The gods see every path. The pursuit of coin and glory isn't worth the cost of your soul."
Lana snorted.
"What would you know about adventure? This isn't about shame. It's about the thrill, the challenge. Finding treasures others only dream of."
"You'll learn one day, perhaps too late, that life itself is the greatest treasure,"
Cass replied. She didn't push further, focusing instead on healing Lana's leg.
"Thank you, Cass. Your warning is noted,"
Tritan said, bowing his head as Cass finished.
"Be careful, adventurers. Danger lurks in every shadow and not all wounds can be healed."
Cass sighed. The adventurers stepped out of the chapel, the echoes of their recent trials still heavy in the air. Determined to shake off the weight of their journey, they resolved to make their way to the warmth of a lively tavern. There they would spend their hard-earned coin on cold drinks and hearty meals, seeking a moment of comfort to unwind, reflect, and prepare for whatever challenges the horizon might bring. The tavern was alive with revelry, a chaotic symphony of laughter and clinking tankards. Meanwhile, Grodd was already deep into his second mug of ale, challenging a half-orc to an arm-wrestling match. The tavern cheered as Grodd slammed his opponent's hand down with a triumphant roar.
"Strength of the mountains!"
he bellowed. Ven, perched at the bar, was regaling two entranced women with another exaggerated tale.
"And with nothing but my loot, I defeated the troll. The secret is finesse, of course."
Lana, ever the shadow, scanned the room from a corner table, her sharp eyes locked onto a bulging coin pouch dangling from a patron's belt. Tritan and Mezra sat at a modest table near the edge of the room, plates of stew and salad in front of them, their conversation a hushed counterpoint to the cacophony.
"I still can't believe Lana. Her greed's going to get us killed one day,"
Tritan said, shaking his head.
"She's reckless, but she's also resourceful. That's saved us more than once,"
Mezra admitted, picking at her salad thoughtfully.
"Resourceful doesn't excuse selfishness." This line of work is dangerous enough without one of us constantly stirring the pot. I will have a long heart-to-heart discussion with her later.
Tritan muttered. He leaned back, his expression dark. Before Mezra could reply, a shadow fell across their table. A hooded figure loomed, his cloak dull and travel-worn, edges frayed from countless journeys. His presence was unassuming, but deliberate, his posture too poised for a common drunkard or wanderer. Triton's hand instinctively shifted toward his sword. Mezra straightened, her expression calm but watchful.
May I sit?
The man asked, his voice low and gravelly.
That depends. What do you want?
Triton said, his tone firm. The man hesitated, glancing around the room as if ensuring they weren't overheard. Finally, he pulled out the chair across from them, sitting slowly.
I hear that you are dungeon raiders, and I need your help,
he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Triton exchanged a wary look with Mezra before leaning forward.
Go on.
The man rested his gloved hands on the table, his fingers tightening as though steeling himself.
Something was taken from me, a mystical artifact that has been in my family for generations.
What kind of artifact?
Mezra asked, her voice measured. The stranger's hood dipped slightly, shadowing his face further.
It's an amulet. It's unique. That's all you need to know.
Triton frowned.
If you want our help, we'll need more than that.
I've told you what's necessary. The details of it is not important except that it is made of silver with a medium-sized amethyst gem. What matters is that it was taken by a band of goblins who raided my home while I was out hunting game in the forest.
The man replied, his tone sharp. Triton raising a suspicious brow.
How do you know it was goblins?
The strange man shakes his head in disgust.
Those revolting creatures left their calling card. There were piles of goblin dung in each of the rooms in my cabin after ransacking the place and taking some of my things. Besides, I've heard reports of increased goblin activity near the outskirts of Omeris. I didn't think they would be close enough to raid my cabin, though.
Mezra studied him carefully, her sharp eyes seeking cracks in his guarded demeanor.
And why not retrieve it yourself?
I would, but I lack the means to take on their numbers alone. You, however, are seasoned adventurers. You have some experience with these sorts of things, right?
The stranger admitted.
And what's your offer?
Triton asked, crossing his arms. The man reached into his cloak, pulling out a small parchment. He slides it over to Triton.
Here is where you can meet me later this evening, and the amount that I'm willing to pay.
Triton flips the parchment over to read its contents. After briefly reading it, he slides it over to Mezra, while facing the man with a look of scrutiny.
Generous.
But is it worth the risk? Goblins may be small, but they're dangerous in packs.
Mezra noted, though her tone carried a hint of skepticism. The stranger leaned forward, his tone dropping to a near growl.
Look, if you're too afraid, I'll find someone else.
Triton's eyes narrowed.
It's not about fear. It's about trust. And right now, you haven't given us much reason to trust you.
The stranger rises abruptly, his chair scraping against the wooden floor.
Look, you have a choice. Help me or don't. But decide quickly. I want my amulet and the rest of my belongings back. You know where to find me.
With that, he turned and vanished into the crowd, his cloak blending seamlessly with the tavern's dim haze. Mezra's gaze followed him until he was out of sight.
What do you think?
She asked, turning back to Triton. He sighed, rubbing a hand over his face.
I don't like it. He's hiding too much.
Most clients do. But that doesn't mean the job isn't worth considering. We do need more coin.
Mezra pointed out. Triton grimaced.
We'll discuss it with the others later. For now, we are all here to relax.
Mezra nodding, though her expression remained thoughtful.
Something about him felt off. We should tread carefully.
Triton nods as he slips the parchment note into his pocket.
We always do. Well, at least, most of us do.
The tavern bustled with life, laughter, and the clinking of mugs. Shadows danced on the wooden walls as firelight flickered from iron sconces. Lana sat alone, her sharp gaze cutting through the crowd, her eyes locked on a pouch bulging with coin, dangling tantalizingly from the belt of a drunken patron loudly regaling his friends. She smirked.
Too easy.
Rising from her seat with feline grace. Lana wove through the crowd, her movements swift and silent. Her hand slipped forward, nimble fingers brushing against the leather pouch. She'd nearly unhooked it when a hand like iron clamped down on her wrist.
Oi!
The man roared, spinning around, his ruddy face twisted with anger.
You trying to steal from me, wench?
Lana's expression hardened, her free hand reaching for her dagger.
Let go of me.
Not until you hand over what you took.
The man barked, his companions rising from their seats, chairs scraping harshly against the floor.
I didn't take anything.
Lana said coolly, her voice low but steady.
Liar!
Another man, a burly fellow with arms as thick as tree trunks, shoved his way forward. Tension rippled through the air, thick enough to choke. Lana's grip on her dagger tightened, her gaze darting around the room for an escape. At a nearby table, Tritan and Mezra froze mid-conversation, their heads snapping toward the commotion.
Damn it, she's at it again.
Tritan muttered with a sigh, standing abruptly.
We can't leave her to handle this alone. She'll escalate it.
Mezra sighed, rising gracefully. Meanwhile, Ven, leaning against the bar with two wide-eyed women hanging on his every word, glanced over his shoulder.
Well, that didn't take long. Shall we place bets on how fast this spirals out of control?
Lana!
Triton's voice boomed across the room as he pushed his way through the crowd. Lana's shoulders relaxed ever so slightly as her leader approached, but the situation was far from resolved.
She tried to rob me.
The man growled, his grip on Lana's wrist unyielding.
Let her go, and we can settle this without breaking anything. Or anyone.
Triton's voice was firm but measured.
And if I don't?
The man challenged, his companions closing ranks behind him. Noticing that the man was still gripping her hand, while distracted with Triton, Lana seizes the moment and delivers a swift, roundhouse kick, striking him square in the face. The blow forces him to release her, igniting a full-blown brawl within the tavern. The room erupted. Lana ducked as a chair flew past her head, its legs splintering against the wall. Triton cursed under his breath, sidestepping a swinging tankard and tackling one of the angry men. Mezra, her calm demeanor slipping, muttered an incantation, sending a gust of wind that knocked two brawlers off balance. Ven watched the chaos from the bar, his expression a mix of exasperation and amusement.
I suppose that's my cue.
He said, rising with a dramatic flourish. A half-orc grabbed Grodd by the collar, but the dwarf retaliated with a headbutt that sent the larger man sprawling.
Who's next?
Grodd roared, his voice carrying over the establishment. Meanwhile, Lana squared off with her accuser, deftly dodging his clumsy swings.
You really should drink less.
The chaos surged, and by the time it finally subsided, the tavern was in shambles. Tables lay overturned, shattered glass crunched underfoot, and the barkeep stood behind the counter, his face a storm of fury. Triton handed over their remaining coins, his expression weary.
For the damage and for the trouble.
The barkeep snatched the pouch with a scowl.
You're lucky I didn't call the guards on you.
We're broke. Again.
Mezra said flatly as the group stumbled out into the cool night air. Triton rounded on Lana, his face dark with frustration.
What were you thinking, Lana?
I was thinking about getting us some coin.
Lana snapped, crossing her arms.
At what cost? You nearly got us killed, and now we're worse off than before.
Triton demanded.
I was handling it.
Lana shot back.
Enough! This isn't helping. We need to focus on what's ahead, not what's done.
Mezra interjected, her tone sharp. The group trudged through the quiet streets, their weariness mirrored in the slumped shoulders of passing night-goers. The moon cast long shadows as they returned to the topic of the hooded stranger's proposal. Mezra broke the silence.
The stranger's offer. It might be our only way to recover what we've lost.
It's a gamble. We don't know anything about him or the amulet he's after.
Triton said, his tone cautious. Lana, walking a few paces behind, her interest piqued.
Wait a minute. What amulet? Do we have a job that you are not telling us, Triton?
Tritan stops and explains to his companions the proposal that the strange man offered and the compensation associated with successfully returning the amulet. Mezra turns to Tritan, her gaze steady.
What's your call, Tritan?
Tritan points back at the tavern while glaring at Lana.
Considering what recently happened back there, we have very limited options.
Tritan then pulls out the parchment from his pocket and angles the document to get enough light from the street lanterns to barely read it.
According to what he wrote, he will be meeting us at the stables tonight. We should head there now.
Ven stretches dramatically with a slight smirk on his face.
Coin and adventure. What's not to love?
Grodd grunted under his breath.
Ha! I'm in and ready for anything. What say you, Tritan?
He sighed, running a hand through his hair.
We'll take the job, but we do it carefully. No risks that we don't have to take. That especially goes for you, Lana,
he added, glaring at Lana.
Fine. But could we at least head to the inn after our meetup with this weirdo? It's been a night.
Grodd scoffs in frustration while shaking his head at Lana.
Yeah, no thanks to you, thief.
Oh, shut up, Grodd. I ought to cut your throat.
Lana said menacingly. Tritan interrupts while rolling his eyes in exasperation.
Stop. Let's not get into another fight that we will regret. Lana, you and I seriously need to talk later.
The group shared weary yet resolute glances, their eyes glinting with a mixture of exhaustion and unyielding resolve. Together, they strode toward the stables, where the shadow of a mysterious figure awaited, a harbinger of the next trial that would test their mettle.